Welcome to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast, providing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs with the 3 Enns: insights, inspirations, and intentional actions. Delivered through monologues and dialogues, we address topics like leadership, productivity, time management, work-life balance, and challenges like stress, conflict, mental health, and much more. Please do not hold back from suggesting specific topics and guests you would like on this podcast. Greetings, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. And this week is one of those weeks where I have a guest on, and it's a privilege for me to have Jason here with me. So I'm going to hand straight over to Jason and let him tell us a little bit about himself.
Thanks. First of all, just really exciting to be chatting with you today, Mikal. Thanks for inviting me on the podcast. Who am I? Jason Lennie. I live in Christchurch, New Zealand. This is my hometown, so have lived here my whole life. I run a brand agency called Ledge, and we also have an offshoot called Beyond the Ledge Press, which is a boutique self-publishing agency. So I'm either working with companies to help realize their brand story through to their visuals and implementation, or I'm working with people working on their own passion projects on their books. I work with a lot of comic artists, graphic novel artists, through to coaches, across the business and self-help space.
Awesome. And you're doing that mostly on your own?
Sort of. I run what I call what do we call it? I use a flexible model. So I do have a studio assistant who is employed, but otherwise I have a team of contractors, and it is about utilizing, working with them based on what the project is, client needs, outcome. So I'm providing creative direction, client liaison. My studio assistant supports me to help things tick over, especially the admin side of stuff. And then again, depending on the scale of the project, I'll be doing creative or strategy, and then I've got my contractors. So yeah, it's a flexible model, and it's worked quite well. There are pros and cons of obviously that versus employees. But I enjoy it because it's, I enjoy elements of it, and we're going to probably dig into that today. So I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. So I'm asking that question because I know from experience, people who are in business and they're doing their own thing, and don't have a whole bunch of staff they can file things out to, and that. What comes with that often is a reasonably high-level stress environment, which means that you're a perfect candidate for this podcast, which is about mental fitness. Because what we're doing here is sharing stories, and there's two sides of the coin story that I would like for you to share with us: the unpleasant one and the pleasant one. And the unpleasant one is the one where you somewhere along the way, it could be last week, last year, 10 years ago, doesn't matter, where you ended up in an undesirable place, an unhappy place, a stressful place, anxious place, or whatever it may be, because you did not have the mental fitness at the time to really deal with that in a really positive, easy way. So that's one side of the coin, and that's a good place to start. And then the other side of the coin is another story where you ended up creating some really good success, gone through some really challenging times. Not because it was easy, but because you had the mental fitness to stick with it and get the results that you wanted. So let's hear a story.
Ooh. Great question. I could grab a whole bunch of stories off the shelf. Like, where do I start? And how far do I go back?
I kind of got the sense that would be the case. So you pick one.
Yeah, and also I like stories. So, um, well, and let's bring this, let's make this relevant to this year, 2025, and then I think I can probably just connect back to previous situations where that showed that lack of mental fitness and how that contributed to each one. Um, and the reason I say 2025 because the best I want to say I hit rock bottom, but that's not completely true. Business I started the year business sort of ticking over quite well. Had some great client projects we're working on. So in that sense, a bit of stability, but definitely in the personal space, home life, and let's be honest, my ability to manage that along with the stress and pressures of business. I just got to a point where the resources I'd been using were not sustainable, and you're looking at the bottom of the barrel and you're scraping sawdust off the bottom. And I burnt out badly. And why that's not unique for me is I've burnt out a number of previous times in different ways, and I managed to grow back from them. But the fact that I keep going back to that place of burnout shows that lack of mental fitness. Now, also to be fair on myself, because it's easy to self-flagellate, we're constantly a work in progress, and each time I've hit that situation, it's helped me to enforce me to work on myself. So each time I've become more aware and clearer. And the big difference I'd say this year when I burnt out was I noticed it immediately. I was aware and I could see the immediate contributing factors in like the weeks preceding it, which was just filling my schedule, having busy weekends, overcommitted to different people and activities, and not getting the rest I needed to restore myself. So I was getting to Monday and I was tired, needing a weekend. So that was the immediate contributing factor in the physical space. But really, what that showed me was it was a whole heap of previous times that had led up to that, and obviously underpinned by my mindset and belief set. That's probably a big picture. So I'll hand that back over to you to reflect, Mikal, because I always appreciate your perspective. And then maybe I can find a couple of things to just hone in on.
Okay, great. And it's a beautiful one from my viewpoint. Um, because like the key here when you burned out this time in your story is that it wasn't the first time. And that you made use of that insight. Okay, here I'm burning out again. Ah, there's a pattern here. So I often people come to me, oh, they're just burned out, and I say, oh, is this the first time? Yes, it's the first time. Okay, that's going to be tricky because people then think, oh, I just need to get out of this current situation I'm in, and then I'll be fine for the rest of my life. Not realizing that the patterns that are caused the burnout have been building for decades. And then it's
Mm.
like the cup is filling up and then it's flowing over. So I see that over and over again. So what I really appreciate about your sharing is that you've already been in that place where the cup was tipping over and then, oh yeah, now I'm fine. I got it sorted. You're back on and going and then suddenly, whoop, it's over again. And when we do that enough times, if we at least got a little bit of intelligence, we at some point, and which is the point you reached this year by the sound of it, it's like, huh, why does this keep happening to me? So, and then recognizing, using my language of mental fitness, is that the reason I keep ending up in that place is because the mental fitness to not get into that place is not there. and then that becomes a focus. So if there's anything else you want to share about that or any past experiences of that, feel free to do that.
Mm.
Otherwise, let's go to the other way, and you could maybe share with us about then what happened this time. Like, what did you do different this time, instead of going, okay, it'll be fine now and it'll be fine forever. You obviously, with that insight, something shifted for you. So you can go to that story if you like.
Yeah, no, great. Yeah, so I've spent my life chasing around other people as a pleaser, with some faulty thinking that uh, if they approve of me, if I do the right thing, say the right thing, make sure I'm there helping them, over functioning, that they'll be happy with me, and then that I'll be okay. So it's my subconscious looking for that approval. And, I know, I was going to say rationally, but I don't know if I do. Cognitively, I know that comes from childhood trauma and faulty beliefs that were established. And that became my way of surviving and living. And the problem with that is it's not sustainable and it's exhausting. And you can never really find your own identity of who you are because you're so busy. Your identity has been shaped by trying to please others. And that's no way to live. Um, so, whew. So what I did differently this year was I had to break the whole thing apart and break me apart. A big part of that was my marriage, and I wasn't sure how much I wanted to share about that. So we'll see. But because it was very unhealthy, and in the sense of that codependency where I'm being the pleaser and exhausting myself,
Mm.
over functioning for my wife. And you know what? She didn't actually need that, because it actually takes two to create a codependency. Yeah, it takes the person who's looking because of their own trauma, but looking for others to rescue them or lift them up. But then it takes the pleaser to come in as the hero and say, yeah, I'll do that, but not knowing how to place boundaries or what's healthy, or allowing another person to stuff up and get hurt and learn from that. So it's a very exhausting role to play. And when I hit that rock bottom, it was like I'd already had this realization previously. The only way that you could rebuild that is, or to reframe that, is you need to break it apart. Because if you've got a faulty foundation, doesn't matter what you build on that, the house is always going to tumble over.
Mm.
Now, so breaking something apart and smashing up the foundation, rebuilding, is really painful, really, and you're dealing with a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, and that's not rational. Like the emotional roller coaster I was on for the first part of this year was up and down, extremes. I only saw that in hindsight. That, of course, it made sense, and I wasn't regulating my emotions. They were just going to extreme highs and extreme lows. There'd be lots of grief and then elation and grief. And anyhow, that's a whole process on its own. And I realize that's going to take a long time to work through. And it has to be done slowly, because when you breaking something apart and rebuilding your foundation, it's really tough. And like, how do I do that? I mean, I spent my whole life building this foundation I've had. And this goes back to childhood, my relationship with my parents. I'm undoing that. I mean, I'm rebuilding that. And that's a lot of work. So what did I do? I did a crazy 2-week road trip all the way up to Northland in New Zealand to do a 4-day retreat with some coach, some stress buster and personal coach called Mikal Nielsen. So that was probably the key thing. And why I reflect on that really importantly is, in many ways, that was July this year. So, if you think about it, halfway through the year, what a good time to do that. Also, winter. So, as we know, Christchurch is pretty depressing and dreary in winter. So, going up to Northland, one, it helped break me out of that winter cycle. My road trip up to Northland was very different from the road trip down. For going up, a lot of pontificating, a lot of emotional processing, grieving, anger. But then doing 4 days retreat, gave me that time to pause, start to reflect, and start to center in on myself and begin that process of, well, who am I and what do I want and what does that look like? And that's really tough because part of my identity is telling me, well, you are who you've been for this life you've lived. But there's a whole lot of faulty stuff that's been programmed there. Mm. So once we get past that, what does that look like and what do I want? And we started that process and that journey over those 4 days. And I know that it's an ongoing process and I need to keep coming back to those moments. I mean, one of the most enlightening moments of the retreat was me talking to some cattle for, I don't know, 10 minutes and telling them my life purpose. So there are some very enlightened cattle in Northland. but and I joke, but if you think about it, you think about cattle, they're there. They're just chewing their cud, eating grass, walking back and forth across their paddock. They see a human, they come over, they're curious animals. And then they just go back, they're not stressed out. They're not worried about all this stuff. So there is something that's quite freeing talking to cows, as crazy and as outrageous as that sounds.
It's very powerful because, again, it's like somebody's listening to you and they're fine with whatever your problem is. Like they will just keep eating and there's a value in that. So I'm really pleased you found the cows on your journey. And, and what stands out for me again in your sharing, Jason, is one of those things that are so critically important for me, and both in my own life, but also in my life as a coach, is helping people first come to that fundamental realization that the foundation is faulty. Like to use your language here, it says that the faulty foundation, faulty from the point of view that it is not serving you. I mean, there is no such thing as a faulty foundation in and of itself, but we can call it faulty because it is not serving it was not serving what you wanted. And you used an interesting word in there, the pleaser, which is, as you said earlier on when we started, you talked about overcommitting. So to me, then that's just another version of the pleaser. So people who have that tendency to please other people out of a need, an egoic need or a faulty need, it will never work. It will work in the moment, but it won't work long term. And then you end up working weekends, and then you don't have time for a relationship, and you don't have time for yourself and nurture yourself, and you don't have time to come on a retreat or get a coach because you're head down, ass up. So that's a danger of getting caught in that. So thank you for sharing that, but also I really want to acknowledge you for recognizing that and then taking the steps you needed to take to start shifting that. And if you know what to do about it, then I would suggest for people just do that. It's just most people don't know in that situation what to do because they didn't learn it at home, they didn't learn it at school. And that is where mentors, coaches, people who have been on that journey can then go, okay, I recognize that, and then support people in that. So it's being vulnerable and being willing to do that. And yes, you could have flown up here and gotten here on the same day, and you chose to do that journey because that was of value to you. So good
Yeah.
on you for doing that as well. And then the last thing to this, since you mentioned relationship, is in that pleaser, which I see a lot of business people have. It's not just a business you will be in that and you will all commit yourself. You will also bring it in as a parent, as a husband, as a wife. And long term, it will not serve you because it is that faulty foundation. So give us a story, Jason, about again a situation, and that can be again back 20 years, 30 years, 10 years, 2 hours, doesn't matter the
Mm.
time of where you actually really created some success for yourself or some achievement or some shift because at that moment you had the mental fitness to deal with what was in front of you and not throw the arms in the air and say, "Oh, can't do this."
Wow. Yeah. Great question. Just before I get to that, the one thing about taking those, I took 2 weeks out for the retreat, and like you said, I could have flown up. It would have been there instantly. This is the longest time I'd taken out to myself in my life or in my adult life. That was just me, no one else. And I took that opportunity to catch up with friends and family and some clients all the way up and then back. Um, and yeah, and just if anyone can do it, take 2 weeks off. I still had the business ticking over. I had my assistant still on things. So yeah, you come back to a whole lot of work that needs to be done, but it's worth it. So cool. Well, uh, so I think if I focused around where I've had when I've had those moments of good mental fitness and clarity is um, and it's one thing that I've always been people have noticed about me and commended me is that I'm open-minded and willing to learn and listen and learn.
Hmm.
Um, Part of me questions that, is that just my pleaser over functioning?
Mhm.
but maybe there's something deeper there of where does the pleaser come from? And as we know, there can be like a double-edged sword. There's a negative and a positive to something. The pleaser in itself isn't the trait. It's just when it's functioning in an unhealthy manner. So on the flip side, what is that pleaser? I suppose it's a responsiveness, it's empathetic, it's caring. I suppose it's being aware of other stuff around you and probably aware of yourself. So I don't have a word for what the positive side of that is, but just based on that, I think the fact that I've always been willing to realize, oh yeah, I don't have all the answers, and seek those out, and be willing to listen and learn and swallow the bitter pill when it's something I don't want to hear. And that's hard. And like some of the work we've done, there's time. I mean, you will only play bad cop maybe, I don't know, 1% of the time, because that's all that's needed.
Hmm.
But what that does is it arrests the situation. It's like going in there with a sledgehammer, just smashing, but then you don't keep smashing. You're like, oh, hey, see what's going on, Jace. See, it forces you to see something from a different perspective. Whereas we can be very guarded with our mind can be very guarded. Always wants to protect ourselves. It's like I'm innocent. I'm not wrong. So taking those moments and taking that correction and realizing, oh yeah, and how can I grow and learn from that? I mean, that's probably like rather than focusing on business successes and personal successes, I think that is the key thing. And that's what's brought me each time on that journey back around to whether it's working with you or other coaches, counselors, and if only I just got onto it a bit sooner each time. However, as that mental fitness and clarity has grown, and I have, and so while the retreat this year sort of came out of chance because you reached out to me to follow up on another matter, and then I shared where I was at. I had been seeing a regular peer support person for quite a couple of years actually, and that person had helped me along this kind of journey of really working through a lot of my mindset and some issues of pain and that stuff. So does that help? I feel that's big picture.
Yeah, that's perfect, Jason. And what's perfect about it is the word you used, open-minded. And so what has that got to do with mental fitness? Everything. Because if you don't have the mental fitness, you will not be open-minded.
Mm,
And, I meet a lot of people who like want my help, but actually I can't help them because they don't have that open-mindedness. And if they're not open to looking at themselves, then there's nothing I can do. Then they might need to go and get a business coach or some other coach, but they don't need my skill set because it requires that. So open-mindedness is an extremely valuable, powerful place to come from. And as you also said in different words, that it's not easy, it's uncomfortable because it is pushing those buttons of these installed faulty foundation. Again, to use your language there. So that's a wonderful example of the need for mental fitness that in those times when you reached out, whether to me or other people, that requires a staggering amount of mental fitness. So congratulations on that. And one last comment um, is you were looking for a word for the downside of the police or the one that always says yes. The positive side of that, one word we could use is the word service or serve. So the pleaser wants to serve, but if it's from the faulty foundation, from the ego to fulfill an ego need, it will not work. It works in the moment, short
mm,
term, but long term it won't work because
yeah,
then you have to keep doing it and then you overcommit and then you burn
yes,
out, which is where we started today. You were talking about burning out.
yeah,
So it's being able to come from the place of pleasing from a service point of view, from your heart, from your soul, from your essence, not from that faulty foundation. So thank you so much for sharing that. Let's hop on to the next question, which is and you kind of answered that in some ways, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Um, Share with our audience a couple of tools that help you grow your mental fitness. And coming on a retreat with
mm,
me doing coaching,
mm,
yes, that's definitely one of them. But
yes.
there have been other tools you've used. There might be a specific book, it might be a course, it might be traveling you did that, like, just give our audience a couple of examples of tools you have used or come across that
Mm.
that could inspire them maybe to check that out and work with that themselves.
Actually, and no, thank you. Well, look, some of the practical tools. Your book, Time Management is a Complete Waste of Time, um, which is really structured around your whole methodology and program, to use that term, of uncovering who I am and what drives you. If many would have heard of Simon Sinek and the what's it called, the power of why, the purpose of why. Anyway, we know the book. Simon Sinek's Why. That's all around purpose. What I really like about your framework you've put together, Mikal, is that you take that down to the next level, your purpose. Well, now how am I going to action that? So what's your mission statement to bring that into being? And then you go down the next level into the key areas of importance in your life. Now, what are those? And then why are those important? So there's a why for each one of those. And that work was really challenging. Like some are obvious, others really tough. Or it's very easy to come up with a very flaky answer. Oh, this is my why. Well, is it really, when the going gets tough, is that really what keeps you going? So that's been really great. And I know this whole framework is one that you've had for a long time, and you've finally brought it together in a book. So if anyone is wondering, I'm going to self-promote your book. So it's really good. And there's an action sheet that's available on Mikal's website. So that's a work in progress, and I realized that is part of that ongoing journey. A few other books I wrote down. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or as I always accidentally refer to it, Highly Effective Living, which I actually think I prefer that title. It's a book, I probably only read a quarter of it over a decade ago. And recently in my BNI group, I won a copy of it one week. And I was like, you know what? This is a perfect time to pull my copy off the shelf, give this other copy away to a friend. And in there, there's a whole model that, it's Covey, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure. I'm not getting my self-help people mixed up. Stephen Covey. His whole model that to break it down, he goes into detail about dependence, so individuals living in dependence, and obviously dependence creates codependency, which obviously is something I can relate to. And you move from dependence into independence, where I'm an independent being, being sustainable about myself. But the next step down is the interdependence. That concept is one that always stuck with me. So interdependence is when we can be in a healthy relationship with another person, but we're not needing them to feel fulfilled as an individual. Because if we think about it, where do relationship problems generally come from? It's from the unmet emotional needs of the individual, which generally comes from their childhood trauma and misbeliefs. And subconsciously, and they don't realize, they're looking to other people to fulfill them. Now, that's great, but it's unhealthy and can lead to toxic situations, and then they explode, and then people go to the next person to try to fulfill that. And that's not just in romantic relationships. Obviously, you can see that in business, in friendships, across the board. And so when you're in that dependency, there's a whole lot of unhealthy thinking. For me, it could be that pleaser mindset or the avoider mindset working in the background. But as you start to surface those and become aware of those and move to independence and through to interdependence, it's like that's what I'm discovering right now, finally, is what does that look like? And I had an aha moment last week when I was mowing the lawn. I was like, I don't need another person. It's not my wife, it's not a friend, it's not a business partner that I need for me to be okay. I am okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is parts of my belief set that still don't believe that and second guess that. But that's that journey of healing and that I'm on. So that's really exciting and healthy. The other ones, these will be lesser known because these are sort of industry specific. So I'm a background graphic designer, moved into marketing, brand strategy. Chris Doe, he is a LA-based, started as a designer, had an agency. In the last 10 years, they've pivoted their business into upskilling creatives to become better at the art of business. So he has a wee book called, great, I didn't write it down. It's called, it's a pocket, the little pocket of dough. I'm getting that wrong, so we'll put the link I'm sure I'll share that with you. It's this little digest book with anecdotes split into key sections, and it's all of Chris Doe's learnings. There's a section there about business, there's a section there about mindset, And you can just read these little anecdotes, and it really can just help, again, arrest when your thinking is sliding back into autopilot to be more self-aware. The other one is Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns. That's Enns. This is very much at creative business owners to move out of the mindset of being driven by price and pitching on price and exhausting ourselves, running around trying to win work and pouring hours into that pitching, to move away from pitching to leading the conversation with businesses and not being afraid, one, to talk about budget, to talk about value, talk about their goals, what they're trying to achieve. That book's been really, dare I say, life-changing for me, but it's always a work in progress.
Mm.
Every time I realize I'm not working to that manifesto, I realize, oh yeah, and I have the same problems. So I go back to that framework. And lastly, The Wealth Dynamics by Roger Hamilton. He has a book around his framework, but also he has a test. You can go online, pay the price, and work out your entrepreneurial profile. My profile came up as the star, and when I did that test in 2014, I was in total denial about that because I was like, I'm not the star. I was expecting to be the creator. Granted, the star is just one away from the creator. But what it made me realize, and I did that test with you, Mikal, it was only in working through that, and then over time, it was a lack of confidence, that didn't all belief in myself. Yes, I have that potential to be the star, and that's what drives me. That's what energizes me. And so the last 10 years, as I've grown into that and more, starting to move more into embodying what that profile means and being more self-aware to the weaknesses. So, getting to come onto this podcast, I've been invited onto another podcast, and I'm emceeing my first public event in early November. And that's both, I joke that it's terrifying. It's not really. It's a bit apprehensive. I haven't done anything on that scale. What if I stuff it up? But I'm also excited and going to embrace it. So that's me also just growing more into that profile.
Great, growing the confidence. So thank you for sharing. I'll get a list from you with all those, and we'll put that in the show notes. And really good for you to share about the wealth dynamics test. I do it with all my clients. It's a very powerful test, and it really shows who we are and what our natural strengths and weaknesses are. And then in your case, it just took a little while to come to realize the truth of that, and then a little while longer for you to start living it more. And that's an ongoing journey, is to living that more and more. So that is fantastic. So very last question today to finish off. I always want to finish off with a quick short story of a transformation story, because, I love transformation. I like change too, but I prefer transformation. So whatever that means to you, just share with us a quick little story of a transformation in your life that stands out for you. Again, it doesn't matter whether it was yesterday or 20 years ago.
Yeah. And I think I'll keep this one current, and it came as a result of the retreat. So the beauty of Waipu, looking over Waipu Cove and the beach it's on the east coast of Northland, it is beautiful. There's the beach there. We went down there a couple of times. I walked down to the estuary once, and it's a great place to go meditate, just be present to the beauty of nature that's around you. Phone away, disconnected, and just being present in that moment. So one of your challenges for me was creating anchors when I come back to Christchurch and daily living. How will I anchor back into those moments? And I totally get why you set that as a task, because as I did get back into daily life and having been away for 2 weeks, there was a lot of work to get back on top of, a lot of admin, and it can very quickly lead you into overwhelm. And I found myself within a couple of weeks detecting that burnout symptoms. The difference, though, was I was aware of it and I could see it, and I could then pivot. And the first thing is just to slow down, pause some of these tasks, and take some time out to be present. So what I started doing, it took me, it been a month after retreat. I started every weekend doing a Christchurch City to surf bike ride. So I go from Central City out to Waimari Beach. So if anyone knows Christchurch, that's the last northern beach within Christchurch before you go a bit further north, like Spencer Park or the Waimak River. It's about 45 minutes, and I go through what was the red zone, the part of Christchurch that was damaged from the earthquake. So it follows the Avon River. Part of that is being restored as a walkway. Part of it is off-road on old roads that have been overtaken by nature. Anyhow, I do that and I go out to the beach, and then I spend 20, 30 minutes there, again, disconnected, whether I've been taking your book, my journal, or just sitting there and just watching the waves and being present. And creating that as a pattern is, one, it's me taking time out for me. I'm also getting physical activity and exercise. And it's ticking all those right boxes of putting me first, looking after me, working on my mental health, my mental fitness, and just restoring me. So that's something I now look forward to. In fact, if I have a full weekend where I can't do it, I'm like, I know I'm missing out.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I mean, that's a massive transformation because the transformation here, as I'm hearing it, is from putting yourself last to putting yourself first. So, like on the aeroplane, you put your oxygen mask on first so that you can serve others. And to me, that I see that a lot of people then put themselves last, and then eventually they will burn out because you've got to look after yourself. So,
Yeah.
thank you for doing that. I want to acknowledge you for that, and I want to thank you for coming on to this podcast and sharing this journey with our audience. Is there any last comment you would like to share with our audience before we round off?
Oh, wow. Okay, so if you've clicked onto this podcast, you've probably done it because you may have been following Mikal for a while and know the work he does, or you've previously worked with him. And it doesn't matter whether you're in business as usual, maybe struggling, maybe crisis mode. It's always healthy to work with someone else because they help change your perspective, help challenge your thinking. And that's what working with yourself and Cal does. So I want to thank you for the you dedicating your life to, obviously it's part of your why and vision for yourself, but helping other people discover themselves and become more aware and be pulled out of the matrix, and to actually start living. So yeah, if you get the chance, DM Mikal, and if you get the chance to do a retreat up to Waipu in Northland, make it happen. No excuses. Excuses will still be there when you're in your coffin at the end of your life. So take control of your life.
Beautiful, Jason. So again, thank you. Thank you for making those changes in your life because you did it. I just was one of the people along the way who helped you facilitate. You did
Yes.
that and you had the mental fitness to do that. So congratulations on that. So with that, thank you for being here today, Jason, and sharing your stories with our audience. And thank you to our audience for being here and listening in. There were a lot of good things there for you to pick up on, some books and some ideas. So till next time, have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. If you have stories of how mental fitness has benefited you that you are happy to share, go to my website, mikal.nz, click on podcast and fill in the guest application form. If you want direct support from me utilizing my 40 years of mental fitness learning and practice, email me at coach@mikal.nz or message me on LinkedIn. Any feedback, review, share, follow, like, or any other good stuff is of course appreciated. Thank you for listening to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast. I'm your host, Mikal Nielsen.